My name is Anika Patel, and this is my story. I was born in New Jersey, but in so many ways, my life always felt like it belonged to two worlds. The one I lived in and the one my parents carried from India, stitched tightly into their hearts. My father, Ramesh Patel, is a quiet man. The kind who believes actions matter more than words. He worked long hours running a small grocery store. He never complained, always saving for the future. My mother, Sunita Patel, is softer, but stronger than anyone I've ever known. She believes in prayer, hard work, and good reputations. And then there's my older brother, Vikram, the golden boy. He went to med school, just like they dreamed he would. Growing up, our home smelled like turmeric, incense, and hope. Every Sunday my mother would ask, half joking, half serious, "Have you found a nice Indian doctor yet?" At first I laughed it off, but once I turned 25, the questions got heavier. The jokes turned into quiet prayers whispered at night. I want people to understand something. My parents aren't bad people. They're not racist. They're not cruel. They're just traditional. They were raised to believe that safety, family, and sameness were the things that kept love strong. They wanted what they thought was best for me. I knew that telling them about Mike would break something. Mike wasn't what they pictured. We met during a group project in our senior year at Rutgers. He was studying finance, not medicine, not engineering. He wasn't flashy, honestly. He was a little awkward, a little nerdy. He loved comic books and bad puns. But he also listened, really listened in a way that few people ever had. He made me feel seen, not measured. Somewhere between study sessions and late-night coffee runs, I realized Mike wasn't just someone I was dating. He was home. Me and Mike had talked about moving in together so many times. But there was always a but, always this heavy invisible wall between what I wanted and what I knew my parents could never accept. I could already picture it, my dad meeting Mike, stiff and silent, blinking behind his glasses, unable to find words polite enough to hide his disappointment. And my mom, sweet and smiling to the world, shaking her head quietly when no one else was looking. All this was eating me alive. Every time Mike brought it up, I'd laugh it off and change the subject. I'd make little jokes to hide the ache inside me. Sometimes I would hint softly, nervously, and ask, "Mike, what if our parents didn't agree to our marriage?" And Mike, being the sweet, trusting guy he is, would just grin and say, "My mom already thinks you're beautiful. We'll win them over, don't worry." Always with that big, hopeful smile. He never realized that I wasn't talking about his parents. I was talking about mine, and the guilt of it was tearing me apart. The only person who knew about Mike was my brother Vikram. He was in full support. He said Mike was a good guy, but warned me gently, "Be careful, Anika. You know how mom and dad are. Handle it delicately." That Diwali, our house was overflowing. The smell of sweets, laughter from the living room, aunties gossiping in the corners. It should have been a night of joy. I was helping Mom arrange trays of samosas in the kitchen when she called me over, smiling strangely. "Anika," she said, smoothing her dupatta like she was ironing out her nerves, "there's someone we would like you to meet." Something in her voice chilled me. It wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't casual. I tried to joke it off. "What? Is this my future husband or something?" The silence that followed was like a stone dropping in a still lake. Time slowed. Mom looked at me, not angry, not teasing, just serious. "Yes," she said simply, "and he's here tonight." I froze. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear anything else. They introduced me to Arjun, a polite, serious young man with kind eyes, dressed in a neatly pressed kurta. He smiled, I smiled, everyone smiled, but inside, I was breaking. Later that week, we were encouraged to meet for coffee. An arranged date, disguised as casual, but heavy with expectations. We sat across from each other at a crowded cafe, sipping lattes neither of us really wanted. The conversation was painfully polite. We talked about work, about favorite movies, about how we both like dogs. But under it all was this thick, heavy silence. This knowing that neither of us truly belonged there. Arjun was perfectly nice, but I couldn't stop thinking about Mike, about how easy it was to talk to him, how he made me laugh without trying, how he made me feel seen. The guilt gnawed at me. Guilt toward Arjun, guilt toward Mike, guilt toward my family who were already planning futures on my behalf. I smiled through it all, because that's what good daughters do. But inside, a storm was brewing, and I knew it was only a matter of time before it broke. The weeks that followed felt like being swept away by a river I couldn't fight. Meetings with Arjun's family were arranged, talks about horoscopes, wedding dates, auspicious timings. My mother pulled out her jewelry boxes, showing me pieces she'd saved for her daughter's wedding day, since before I was even born. Saris were chosen, vibrant reds and golds, heavy with embroidery. Menus were discussed, samosas, biryanis, ladoos. Guest lists stretched into the hundreds. It wasn't just a wedding, it was a merging of families, a celebration of tradition, a moment my parents had dreamed of their entire lives. And through it all, I nodded, I smiled, I said yes at the right times, okay at the others. Inside, I felt like I was watching someone else's life unfold. I felt like a silent actress in a play I hadn't auditioned for. Mike started noticing the distance. He would text late at night. "You okay? You've been quiet lately. Is it us?" I never answered honestly. How could I? How do you tell the person you love that you're being marched toward a future that has no place for them? One evening, sitting on my bed, trying on gold bangles my mother had bought, I broke down. Silent tears, hot and helpless, slipping down my cheeks. Vikram found me like that. He sat down next to me, handed me a tissue, and didn't say anything for a while. "You don't have to do this, Anika," he said finally, voice low. "But if you walk away, it won't be easy. Mom and Dad, they won't understand. Not for a long time." I nodded, and I already knew this all too well. The night before the wedding, the house was alive with music and laughter. Henna stained my hands, intricate designs woven with names and blessings. Gold jewelry sat heavy on my wrists and neck. The smell of jasmine and rosewater filled the air. Everyone kept saying how happy I looked. No one noticed the tremble in my fingers. No one noticed the way my heart was breaking. At 1 a.m., hours before the ceremony, I stood by the front door with nothing but a small suitcase. I left a note on the dining table, just a few lines, written through blurry tears. "I'm sorry, I can't do this." It read, "I love you, but I have to choose my own life." Those are the only words I could master enough courage to write, and I walked away. Away from the altar, away from the family I loved, away from everything I had ever known. I stepped out of the cab, tears streaming down my face, the cold night air biting into my skin. Mike was already waiting for me outside his apartment, pacing nervously. The moment he saw me, suitcase in hand, tears I couldn't control, he rushed to me. I collapsed into his arms, sobbing uncontrollably. "Is everything okay, babe?" he asked with a shaky voice. "I got your text. I was so worried." That text, the only thing I could manage to send. "I love you so much. I choose you. I hope you're home. I'm coming now." It felt like something out of a Bollywood movie, just without the music and the dancing. Mike barely hesitated. He paid the cab driver, grabbed my suitcase with one hand, and practically carried me inside with the other. His apartment was tiny, just a living room, a kitchen barely big enough for two people to stand in, and a bedroom that had a bed, a desk, and nothing else. But to me, it felt like the only safe place in the world. The moment we got inside, I hugged him so tightly that my arms started to ache. I couldn't let go. I didn't want to. Mike pulled back just enough to look into my tear-soaked face. His voice was so soft and steady. "You can tell me everything tomorrow. Right now, get some sleep." That night was even worse than I had imagined. I couldn't sleep. I tossed. I turned. I stared at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the paint like they held the answers to the life I had just shattered. My phone buzzed nonstop. Calls, messages, missed calls, family, friends, cousins, aunties. I turned it face down, the buzzing like a heartbeat that wouldn't stop. I didn't pick up a single call. I didn't read a single message. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might crack open. My head throbbed with guilt, fear, shame. I knew this was it. I had made my choice, and in so doing, I knew I was disowned. The next morning, everything felt different, quieter, heavier. Mike made me tea and sat next to me on the couch, waiting, patient, solid. "You don't have to talk about it until you're ready," he said. But this was Mike, so I did talk. I opened up about everything: my parents, the wedding, our June, the traditions, the guilt, the fear. Mike just listened, his hand on mine, never once letting go. We started our new life together in that little apartment. It wasn't easy. Money was tight. We both worked long hours, barely scraping by. I miss my mom's cooking. I miss my dad's laugh. I miss Diwali lights and family dinners and late-night chai. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, mourning a life I could no longer return to. But it was love, quiet, patient, and unwavering. That held me through the darkest hours. Because through it all, Mike stayed by my side. He never complained, never asked me to be okay before I was ready. He just loved me, patiently, steadily, and without conditions. A year later, we got married. No big ceremony, just a courthouse, a simple white dress, and Mike slipping a ring onto my finger with tears in his eyes. Life slowly, painfully, beautifully began to rebuild itself. We worked harder, we saved more, we moved into a bigger apartment. I went back to school, got my degree, built a career I was proud of. 3 years later, we welcomed our first baby boy, Ayan. 2 years after that, a little girl, Lila. And then another boy, Dev. Our house was always messy, always loud, always filled with laughter. The family I thought I had lost, I found again. We made it ourselves. It had been almost 8 years. 8 years of silence. 8 years of birthdays missed. 8 years of wondering if they even thought of me anymore. Slowly their voices faded. Their laughter softened into echoes, and their faces became sketches in my mind, delicate, incomplete. They were becoming memory, and I was learning how to live without them. I had changed my number when I moved cities, a fresh start, away from the past. So, when my phone rang that afternoon, flashing an unfamiliar number, I almost didn't pick up. Something, instinct, fate, call it what you will, made me swipe accept. "Hello, Anika." It was Vikram, my brother. His voice hadn't changed, still steady and calm even after all these years. And somehow, it was the most comforting thing I had heard in years. For a few seconds I couldn't speak. I just sat there, clutching the phone, blinking back tears I didn't even know were coming. "How did you even find this number?" I asked, my voice shaking. He laughed, a little awkward, a little sad. "Mom still had one of your old friends on Facebook. I guess when you want to find someone badly enough, you figure it out." There was a long pause. Then he said, "I miss you, Anika. Can we meet?" We met at a small coffee shop halfway between my city and his, my idea of neutral ground. I spotted him the moment I walked in. Older now, a little more serious, but still my brother. He stood up immediately, pulled me into a hug. I froze for a second, then melted into it. It felt like coming home. Over mugs of strong coffee and too many awkward silences, we talked. Vikram told me everything. The day I left, it was chaos at home. My wedding dress, laid out so carefully, abandoned. Guests whispering. A scene none of them would forget. But what came after was worse. Mom and Dad fought. The kind of deep, vicious fight that rips at the seams of a marriage. Accusations, regrets, pain they had never voiced before. "Mom cried for days," Vikram said, staring into his coffee. "She kept saying she just wanted you to be happy, that she thought she was protecting you, but she realized too late she was only protecting herself. Her idea of what your life should look like." "And Dad?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Vikram shrugged. "Dad, he was angry at first, but it wasn't really anger. It was shame, guilt. He kept saying he failed you somehow, that he should have listened better. They miss you, Ani," he said quietly. "They miss you every single day." That first meeting cracked something open inside me, a wall I hadn't even realized I'd built around my heart. One meeting turned into 2, then 3, each one peeling back a little more of the distance, until something fragile but real began to grow. Slowly but cautiously, Vikram started sending pictures of my kids to Mom and Dad. He told them about Mike, about the life we had built together, of our apartment, our children, our joy. The tears still came, the silences still lingered, the fear hadn't vanished, but something had shifted. Somewhere deep inside, the ice was melting. And then, one Sunday afternoon, it happened. Vikram called. "Mom and Dad want to meet you," he said. "All of you, if you're ready." I was terrified. Mike squeezed my hand the whole drive there. "Whatever happens," he whispered, "I'm proud of you." When we pulled into the driveway of my childhood home, I thought my heart might actually stop. The front door opened. There they stood, my mom and dad. Older, grayer, but still. Them. I stepped out first, the kids tumbling out behind me, full of nervous energy. Mike held Ion's hand. Lila clutched my leg. Little Dev was perched on Mike's hip. For a moment, no one moved. And then, Mom started crying. Not delicate, polite tears. Real, raw, shoulder-shaking sobs. I rushed forward without thinking. She crushed me into a hug so tight it knocked the breath out of me. "I'm so sorry," she whispered over and over again into my hair. "I'm so sorry, Beta. I love you. I love you." Dad stood a few feet back, blinking rapidly, his jaw clenched like he was holding something in. Finally, he stepped forward and laid a trembling hand on Mike's shoulder. "Thank you," he said simply. "Thank you for taking care of our daughter." Inside the house, everything was the same, and yet, everything was different. Mike sat with Dad, awkward at first, but slowly warming up over cricket scores and financial market gossip. The kids ran around like they had always belonged there. Mom couldn't stop staring at them, touching their hair, kissing their foreheads, tearing up every few minutes. There were no grand speeches, no perfect apologies, just food, laughter, tears, forgiveness, the messy human kind. And in that moment, I realized something. Love, real love, doesn't always come wrapped in fairy tales and grand gestures. Sometimes it's messy, painful, fragile, but when it's real, it always finds its way home. If you had told me 8 years ago that this is where I would end up, I wouldn't have believed you. I thought choosing love meant losing everything. I thought I would always carry the guilt, the shame, the loneliness. I thought there would be no way back. But life has a funny way of teaching us. Love, real love, isn't about perfect choices. It's about messy ones, hard ones, brave ones. It's about trusting your heart, even when it shakes in your chest. Today my children run barefoot through the halls of the house I once ran away from. Mike laughs with my father over cricket matches. My mother teaches my daughter how to rap her first sorry. And somewhere along the way, forgiveness grew. Slow, stubborn, and beautiful. We didn't erase the past. We didn't pretend it didn't hurt. We simply chose to love anyway. And in the end, love won. It always does.